Today's guest is Juan, and his journey takes coffee from the farms of Chiapas to supermarkets, cafes, and even film festivals. We unpack Cali's mission, the shift happening in Mexico's coffee culture, and the idea of conscious capitalism, where everyone in the chain wins. So early stages, I imagine, was lots of focus on education, educating the consumer, educating the customer on what the coffee process looks like and why it's important and why they should purchase it. Talk to me about the general overview of coffee in Mexico, and kind of like the pros and cons. I know there's some complexities with exporting and that sort of thing. So from your lens, after 7 years plus in the industry, give me a general overview of coffee in Mexico.
Definitely. So the most popular drink or the preparation of coffee in Mexico, it's soluble. So just instant coffee. That makes up, if I'm not mistaken, like 80 to 85% of what people drink. That's nationwide. And to talk about, this new wave, which we're a little behind of what the US or Europe or Asia has been seeing, the past couple of years. So all of our concept was designed because I lived in San Diego, right? And I got to see all those micro roasters, come to life and be very successful, right? So we wanted to portray that kind of, experience, but also how people really valued the coffee, right? So we got to start Cali. We were not the first, but one of the first coffee roasting concepts that started in the city. That was in 2019. And to just say the least, because or to simplify it, in the last 7 years, there's been a boom of independent coffee shops. I can't talk about like Guadalajara or Mexico City because I don't live there, and I've been there, and we've experienced some coffee shops, and they're growing a bunch. But in terms of what we experienced and what we lived, it's been a boom. There's more and more coffee shops. I think when we started, there was about 4 to 5 brands. Now there's more than 60 plus independent coffee shops in Monterrey. So that just tells you, 1, the surge in popularity of coffee. 2, how people really like to go to our coffee shop, because obviously they're not just going there for the coffee, they're going there for the experience. And this era of home office also detonated the second place or third place that really Starbucks started back in the day, and now they're trying to revive it. So it's pretty funny how we started with no actual path. We were like, hey, let's do this, showcase Mexican coffee and see where it leads us. And we actually were at the the beginning of this transition into, and I wouldn't say that we specify or specialize in like high quality coffee. We serve high quality coffee and specialty coffee, but it's not something that we pride ourselves on. We pride ourselves in hey, we want you to feel at home when you come to Cali, and the experience is way more important than the quality of our cup, right? We serve great coffee because we're vertically integrated and control every process, but it's not our selling point. And to just tie it in or tie it all in with the question, the coffee industry has been changing in the past 7 years that I've been involved in it. I can't talk about before. In Monterrey and actually in one of our supermarkets where we're president, HEB, they actually have 40% of their sales in coffee is roasted and whole bean, whole bean and ground coffee. So you're starting to see a trend towards this change in the patterns of consumption in the Mexican consumer. They're gravitating more towards I wouldn't say a better coffee, because I'm not saying that ground coffee is like the best, but it's definitely showing you that people are getting a little bit more sophisticated in the type of coffee that they're drinking, and that they're walking away. I wouldn't say walking away because they're still drinking it. It's very convenient to have, instant coffee, but there's more demand for ground and whole bean coffee since we started in the business, and that's kind of what we also would like to see and are pushing for, that consumption to keep growing.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting hearing about the growth of the industry in Mexico, and I'm just thinking back. I've just remembered something, which was, are you familiar with Drift magazine?
Drift, yeah, we actually appeared on one.
Okay, awesome. So in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, but Drift and Standard are kind of the go-tos for coffee. And I remember, I believe it was 2017, the Drift magazine came out featuring just Mexico City as a coffee hub.
Yeah.
And I imagine that kind of helped put Mexico on the map, Mexican coffee on the map. And fast forward, 8 years, now there's geishas that are being used in WBC and all these different things. So as you've been part of this growth, and I guess a more focused question might be, you started in green, now you've got cafes, you're completely vertically integrated. What is the majority of your business coming from?
In terms of volume, the green coffee and that company is far older, right? And it's easier to push green coffee because there's just presence of multinationals that come to Mexico and buy coffee. So because we do have that volume or industrial, industrial part of the value chain, we sell way more green coffee, right? But the sales in roasted coffee are becoming more relevant, and it's where we want to push our growth towards. Why? Because there is, so the value added by roasting and the value in green coffee, there's a big difference, right? So we want to start pushing more towards, or more of our green coffee towards our roastery, and not as much as to other roasters, maybe globally. So to give you the quick answer, we sell way more in our green coffee operation right now, about 4 times what we sell in our roasted, and that's in about 5 times more. And that's monetary wise, so economically. In volume, it's like 10 times more, okay? So if you see that and if you listen to those like differences, well, obviously if we're selling less volume in a roasted, but are very close to the sales of a 10 to 15 times more volume company in green, well, where would you put more of your eggs, right? Or where would you distribute more of your investments? You would push it more towards less volume and more sales, right? So that's kind of what that's our effort, in our 5 to 10 year plan. As how do we become bigger and better roasters? And instead of serving so much clients that roast coffee, how can we end up having more roasted coffee clients, right? So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
100%.
Yep.
And so focusing more on the distribution, like the HEBs and that sort of thing, or more cafes, or both simultaneously?
That's a great question. It really depends. Obviously, it's more seamless to sell to a supermarket because sometimes a cafe or a restaurant, they want to, for you to put the machinery and give them the service and the maintenance. And we have partnered with a company that does that as a joint venture with us, that they take care of all the machinery. So that's a new business that we started actually in the beginning of this year, and it's going pretty well. But we do private labels as well. So it's just not Cali, the brand. So we do other private label brands. We actually work with HEB. We work with some, big coffee shops in Mexico that have, around 50 to 70 coffee shops here, and we do their brand. So if I would summarize my answer, it would be that we want to keep pushing the roasted beans via sales to supermarkets and stuff like that. The coffee shops are, I would practically say that they're 2 different businesses. One is roasting and distributing, one is operating coffee shops. CapEx for opening coffee shops is way higher, so your growth is is very limited on your resources. And in the roastery side, buying another roaster, buying another, packaging machine is very different than opening a new coffee shop, right? Because you would buy it in terms of the demand that you already have, and the return on investment on a roaster, or a packaging machine is very correlated with the increase of volume and sales that you have at the roastery. Your overhead stays the same, practically everything stays the same, but your variable costs, right? So in terms of growth, they're very different. We want to have a lot of coffee shops. That doesn't derail us from this mission and vision and how we want to grow that business. But the roastery, I would say that it's a very shorter route towards more sales and a bigger operation. But we actually had on this trip, we had the opportunity to talk to the co-founder of Big B Coffee. As I mentioned before, they have 500 coffee shops, right? That's a lot. For USA standards, they say that they're small, but for us, they're huge, right? They're 10 times, 100 times our size, right? And they sell, I don't know, $500 million a year of coffee, and they're really big. They're an inspiration to us. And the founder, he's always like picking our brain, like, hey, what's your strategy of growth? What's next? What city is next for you guys? How many coffee shops can you fit in Mexico and stuff like that? So he's always picking us, and he's like, hey, like, what's next? And we're really excited for what's next for Cali. I think it's more clear to us now than it was back then, and we really want to push towards having multiple coffee shops in multiple cities, and really be that brand that when you think of Mexican coffee, you think of Cali, right? So yeah, it's maybe two separate answers, two separate companies, but definitely we're really motivated to keep growing and to not only keep growing, but really increase the awareness via the growth of a commercial brand, which is Cali.
Mm-hmm. You obviously have a bit of an early adopter advantage, if you will, because like you said, there were several cafes when you started, and now there's 70 in Monterrey alone, whatever the case may be. But I'm curious as to what you would attribute your success to. Like, was it fast pivots? Is it your vision? Why do you think you're growing at a rate and making these partnerships with supermarkets, et cetera, at a rate that exceeds other similar businesses?
Mm-hmm. Definitely being first or being early into the changes in the industry is something that positions you better. I wouldn't attribute that like 100% of the success. And I wouldn't attribute it to like just being excellent at operating, because we all make mistakes and we're learning. It's a learning process, and we don't know everything, right? But honest relationships and the story that we have is very hard to come by. And we're barely realizing that that's very much I wouldn't say that it's 100% of our success, but we just realized how important it is and how brands, work so hard to create a story. And this story was not created, it's true. And it's a story of many, many years that we are now telling, and that we are seeing a lot of traction with the consumer, with partners, with other companies, that they really empathize with the story of hard work, of the Mexican coffee producers, and that not everything is just for profit, but we are working in a conscious capitalism model that is really, I would say it's the future, where you are, taking into account all the stakeholders. And I fell in love with that, right? And every time we talk about it and these conversations, that's what motivated me to come, right? Because you ask the right questions, and I get more involved in my project, and I love what I do, and I love it more when I speak to people like you that are interested and genuinely interested in what people are doing, right? So I would attribute our success to multiple variables. One, being at the right place at the right time, having the right product, and jumping at the opportunities. Because you can freeze sometimes when you see a very big project and you're like, I don't know if I can do it. A very, very small story that I'll tell you. When we started doing the private label for HEB, we rented for us, it was a huge facility. It was empty. We had to, do all the upgrades and stuff. And we went to a convention in Costa Rica for coffee. And when we were there, we got a call. We were like, hey, because of this, pressures and stuff like that, our accountant had, falsely altered a document that they send to the supermarket, and practically we were going to be, shut down because, hey, you're sending a document that was altered, an instruction that we didn't give, right? And practically HEB was like, hey, we're gonna cancel the project, and we had already signed a lease, we had already invested in the property. And we were like, fuck, like we're done. Like that, we made the investment because we had secured a contract, right? Obviously, we were able to overcome it. It was an honest error, and we went to talk to directives at HEB, and they were able to amend the situation. But it just tells you that you're never ready for that big opportunity. You're never ready for everything, and you can't wait to be ready. And Bob always says that they're with this new project of Farm Direct that they're building the airplane while it flies, right? So it's something that every entrepreneur kind of can relate to, and it's cliche, but at the same time is very real.
Yeah. And those sort of things come up all the time. I mean, that's a pretty hardcore story. If you lose like your biggest contract overnight over something that was unintentional for you.
Definitely.
How, as a founder, as somebody who that responsibility sits with 100% of the time, ultimately, regardless of whether it was your accountant's oversight or whatever, it falls on you. That pressure is extremely complicated to deal with. How did you deal with that situation? And I mean personally, mentally, and similar situations like it.
Definitely. One is having a network of people that support you. Because yes, you're on a solo journey, if you could say, but you have so many people that you work with. From your partners, which are the most important people in your business, because you kind of, hey, you look at him, you look at your other partner, and you're like, what are we gonna do? And that's the first layer. You have that support, and that you're not in it just alone. Then you have obviously all the people that depend on you, which is your employees, and that's very important for me and for us, not just me, but for my partners. I don't think we've ever failed to pay an employee. We didn't pay ourselves like for 3 years prior to having our first salary. And I wouldn't say that it was a shock and we were like depressed and stuff like that. It was more like, hey, what can we do to remedy this, right? And walk through it. And you always start looking for, hey, well, let's find another client just to not depend as much as for one client. And actually after that, we really went on a mission to diversify our sales, because you can't have one client that can ruin your business, because at the end of the day, it could be a business decision like, hey, we're just not going to sell coffee anymore because it's not profitable, with all the coffee prices going up and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to happen. Coffee is a very important product for them, but diversifying, you definitely reflect on the errors you make and how can you be way more solid going forward. So first of all, and to summarize and to get to the question, I think it's a network of support that you create while on the journey.
Yeah. I think it takes like a certain amount of tenacity and like grit, I suppose, to handle a challenge like that and not get, in the weeds and kind of woe is me kind of mentality, right? Have you always had that? Like even going into, when you were growing up and that sort of thing, did you have these attributes that are important for a founder to have that can allow you to push forward and, keep your head on straight while you have to make these tough decisions?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I don't think I have like the right answer. I would consider myself someone that I've always wanted to have my own company. That's something that I remember as a child. First, I wanted to be a professional football player, and that was my first dream that didn't come true. And my second was that I grew up in a family of business owners. I had that from my grandparents, then from my parents, that they also own their business together. And that was what we talked about, at every meal. Hey, how's the business going, etc. And so I wouldn't say that I'm made, or in a sense, but have been hearing so much about just business and struggles and how they overcome it and stuff like that. And I think you do build a certain skill set that definitely helps. But one, and this is, having the privilege of having the support of my family to be able to say hey, I'm not going to have a salary for 3 years. You can't live off of nothing, right? But sometimes businesses require that. And if it's either your family or you have another job, because there's some people that are having, they're on their journey or the entrepreneurial journey, and they're working a second job or a third job because they need to support themselves while the business, flies. So in that case, my family was able to support me, and that was awesome. So yeah, and the one thing that I can tell you now that I have a family, I have a kid, and have a wife to support, there's way more fire in you to get things done and not waste time, and to be able to, hey, there's an economic contribution to my work, and I'm able to support my family. But I don't know, it's stress is part of life. I like being stressed. In school, I was a procrastinator. I don't know if you guys are as well, but I wouldn't do an essay, I wouldn't prepare for a test until the night before because I didn't have a rush to do it. But whenever I had that rush to get to work, I would get it done. I never failed a class in my whole life, but I've never also excelled at school. But definitely that rush, that feeling of pressure is something that I like. And I see similar people in as business leaders and stuff like that. I think that sense of urgency, that sense of hey, if I don't do this, maybe I won't have to eat and stuff like that. And it's part of business at an early stage. I wouldn't say I wouldn't risk so much again having the family that I have and the responsibilities that I have. But at the time, I was able to do it. And now with some security, I can maybe, try another venture at some point.
Yeah. That moment that you're discussing, you said that you had a new kind of fire once you had a family to support and that sort of thing. And for some people that's a family, and there could be many other cases that fire is ignited. What does it feel like?
Gave me goosebumps because it's something that I don't know how to describe it. It's like the love for your kid. I can't put it into words, but he's so vulnerable, so dependent on the parents. And in Mexico, there's a big I don't know. You see the parent as the provider, right? So for me, that's a big shoes to fill, because I know that my dad and my parents were able to support me throughout my life, and they paid for my studies, they helped me with the business. So I have that standard very high, and that's the standard that I put myself at, or better or higher, right? And it's not just economically, because at the end of the day, well, yeah, you provide for your family, but I think right now I'm more conscious of the time that I really spend with my family, and for myself to do well in the business and to be able to also accommodate my schedule. Like we were talking earlier, part of the day I will go to the office and a part of the day I go to my house to work. I don't know if that could be possible if I was working, a job, a regular 9 to 5. So I think that the fire that I have in me is to, one, support the growth of my family in the best way possible, and second, how can I spend more time with them without sacrificing the first. So yeah, that's kind of it.
This experience that you had growing up, obviously in an entrepreneurial household, and then you have your own experiences since, and now you are providing for a family and your son. What is important throughout all of that experience that you learned from all of those stages to pass on to your son so that he can, obviously be successful in whatever he chooses to do, whether it be entrepreneurial or not?
Mm-hmm. It's hard because my parents did something else. My parents were in a more industrial business. They would sell industrial supplies to, I don't know, Rolls-Royce, Waukesha and stuff like that, cutting tools and that sort of things. I didn't like what they did because they were just resellers of a product that they didn't own, right? They would buy 3M products. They would buy these tools from, whatever tools, and they would resell them, right? They were distributors. My grandparents, or my grandfather, he had a wheat mill, and he had wheat. He would grow wheat and then process at a mill, and it would end up at a finished product. So that really inspired me, and I really wanted to have a vertically integrated business. So, but that's me. And when my parents, they were very, what's it called? Empathetic, right? They never told me, hey, you gotta go into the family business, you gotta keep it running and stuff like that. So I would like to be like that with my son. Obviously, would like for him to follow his passions and to have a mean to, in later part of his life, provide for his family. And I would try to make the best or share with him the best way to succeed in that way, and obviously help him professionally in how I can, and all my capabilities. But I would never want him to feel the pressure of, hey, you have to do what I do, or you have to go into the family business, because I didn't feel that from my parents. So I would like to be the same, where, hey, these are your cards. Obviously, you can work at the family business. Hopefully, he would like coffee and he would like to work in the family company. But it's not something that I would like for him to feel as this is that thing that I have to do. No, I would like for him to have his own decisions, his own opportunities, and forge his own path. So that's what I would like to instill in him from a young age. Work hard, obviously, that's a given. I would like for him to have a good work ethic, but that doesn't imply that he has to, work in the same industry or the same company or the company that we own as a family.
We briefly touched on this earlier, but I kind of want to expand on the idea of conscious capitalism. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you a personal definition, and because we've been talking about it so much this past 2 weeks, but it's just taking all the stakeholders into account. Sometimes we want to have more profits, but that's depending on, hey, I need to negotiate harder with my producer or my supplier of bags. But then what does that do to your supplier? What does that do to the other stakeholder of your value chain? Well, it makes them go back to their supply chain and tighten the margins for, the other part of the value chain. So for me, conscious capitalism, more than anything, is respecting and setting the rules of the game for everyone to grow and to and to be able to reach or search for the same things that we're searching for, which is security, which is, just having the basic needs of human life, and the pursuit of happiness for me is very important, obviously, because we want to be happy and we're just not in a rat wheel or a hamster wheel doing work because we do work, and for them to also support their future generations. So conscious capitalism for me englobes all of that, and how I will continue making profits, because it's still capitalism. But how am I going to impact the lives of the whole value chain, where I'm not just taking everything for myself, but I'm empowering those that work with me and are part of the industry that I'm participating in, and we're all striving, and we're all being able to pursue that better life.
Do you think this idea of conscious capitalism is something that every business can and should implement? And maybe if so, what are some of the barriers that make it complicated, or even just mentally complicated, for people to understand and implement in their own business?
Definitely. Being able to experience the work that has been done for many years in Chiapas through my business partners is something that I can't never not see. It's kind of like when you see something and you're like, hey, like this is something that has to be done this way, right? And when you find the recipe, you can't go back, because now you're like, hey, well, I can't really tighten the margin on my producer. Then he's not gonna want to produce anymore, or his kids are not gonna be they're not gonna want to go into coffee, right? So to kind of put that into context, every industry has a value chain. A t-shirt, shoes, hat, watch, everything has stakeholders, and every business has to be asking the right questions. I think as business owners and people that are, high executive, they should be more involved in the industry that they're in, and not be lazy, because right now in the era that we live, it's a global economy where, hey, I'll buy my bags from China, I'll buy my coffee from Africa, I'll buy this other things from Australia, and it's fine. But you don't go to Asia, you don't go to Australia, you don't go to Africa, because you live in America. And that ignorance, you don't know the impact that it's having in where those products are coming from. And learning and throughout this process of meeting people that do, fly, that do take the time to understand where their coffee or their product in general is coming from, those are the people that I think will succeed in the future. Because the world is relationships. And if you genuinely are taking care of the other business that makes your business a business, I just see that as the recipe for success. Because there was a guy at the conference yesterday that asked a question. He was like, hey, what do you see? How are you able to control the effect of a plague in the field, or another? I translated it to COVID because we shut down for 2 months, and we needed to pay everything as well. And the thing that came to my head was like, how do you build resilient supply chains, where one day for you, one day for me, because we don't know what the future holds, right? And in an era of climate change, an era of geopolitics that are crazy, one day it may be us that will need the help. Right now, coffee is really expensive compared to what it was, right? And right now is when we most need to have that relationship with the producer, because if not, they would just sell it to whoever, because the price is it's so well priced that they could just sell it to anybody and they'll get a just price. They'll get paid more than what it cost them to produce. At the inverse, when coffee is really cheap, we're a really good client because we pay a premium. We pay above the cost of production. But if we didn't have those relationships for so long, maybe it would be really hard for us to buy coffee, because now the playing field is even for everybody. And that's what the market did, not us, right? But I think that's what I would say in terms of the question. It's build resilient supply chain and really take into account everything that goes into your product, where it comes from, and be more curious.
Mm-hmm. This idea of relationship building and maintaining these relationships brings me back to the storytelling element that we were talking about before, because you mentioned obviously part of the attribution to your success has been the storytelling that you're doing regarding these relationships. But what other efforts are you deploying to tell your story? Because ultimately people are buying from people.
Yeah. That's a hard question and a hard answer. Because you can have all the efforts that you want and spend all you want on marketing, but if you're not saying or not delivering the right message, you're not going to go anywhere. And right now we're in the era of digital marketing, and everything is digital, and you can just pay, or have ads on Facebook and it run and it, but I don't know if that's the impact that we want to have, because usually those lead to a conversion, and those. I think it's a metric that for us it doesn't say or does anything. Right now, actually, we're working on I wouldn't say a rebranding. We love our brand, we love our name, but we're working on how to communicate a better message through the brand, and we're working with a really top agency here in Monterrey that are helping us on this journey. We're really working on our passion. Obviously, our mission is the same, to showcase, Mexican coffee. But to deliver the message is a task. Sometimes people don't want to listen, and you don't want to be that stubborn company that just wants to educate all the time. So you have to really take that into account, where you don't just become the boring company that's always talking about this educative stuff. You also have to have your cinnamon rolls and your social media, because those are what you sell as well. And you don't live off a story, you live of sales. So it's hard. And how do we do that? By having these conversations, by having small groups of people and taking the time to actually tell the story when they come to a coffee shop, and when they ask, have a good education base for your baristas, for everyone that works with you, and them being your ambassador. So having an ambassadorship for me is the most, or the best way of telling your story, and for it to resonate with your consumer. Because an ad could be seen, could be just skipped, and you don't know the impact. But hand to hand, talking to you, and for you listening what we do, probably you're not going to forget it, and probably you're going to tell a friend, like, hey, I had this great conversation with this guy from Cali, this is the work that they're doing. So how do we create that? It's part of our growth through our coffee shops, where our coffee shops are a controlled experience, where you learn everything about Cali and you learn everything about Mexican coffee. So it's a slow but rewarding journey to tell a story like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Organically.
Yeah.
Love it. What's the next big milestone that you're working towards? And I mean that from a perspective of, everybody has goals and that sort of thing, but the thing that's the next thing for you to kind of show that you're on the right path going forward.
We were about to open a coffee shop at the airport, which is for us a huge milestone. Since we started, it was a milestone that it would be so cool to have Cali at the airport. There's so much people, so much international flights. A lot of people will see the brand. And right now, I think what we're most excited about our work is seeing what we can create with this agency to set the new standard or the new era of Cali and our communication. Because our growth, we've been doing coffee shops for 7 years. We've been doing the roastery for 4 to 5, and all the green bean for more than 40 years. So in terms of business operations, I think we're really solid, and we have a foundation, a really good foundation to start growing. But at the center of this is, how are you going to grow? What are you going to portray? What is the message that you want to send out? And if we don't solidify that, we'll grow, but we'll grow with no north. Maybe we'll grow and people will not really understand what we do. And the impact or the momentum that we can lose from not communicating a concise message or having a strong brand can be very debilitating for our growth. So right now, the most exciting thing for me is working on this, just solidifying our brand. I want to say make it more institutional, because that can sound unappealing or unsexy, but it's really, being ready for the growth that's coming, and take advantage of the momentum that we have been creating.
If you're to leave the audience with one piece of advice, these people are just starting their businesses or thinking about starting something. From your experience, what would that be?
The one thing that I've learned is that everything takes more time than you expect. You think it's very easy. You think like, hey, I just close this client and it's my jump, and I'll be, making more money and I'll be set. Good things take time. They take time. And that would be the one thing that maybe I would have liked to, I learned it was my experience, not to be so just anxious of success, because if you do the right thing day in and day out, it'll come. It's guaranteed. But it does take time, and patience is a virtue. And I've learned to have patience. I was really an impatient kid, and I would always like things to go fast. And if I was working out, I was like, hell, just double workout session in the day and stuff like that, to try and condense and be more fast towards my goals. But in business, you depend on people. You depend on a supermarket replying to your email. You depend on someone answering your call. So it's not just what you do, it's what, all the stakeholders do. So yeah, being patient, but never losing sight of or losing your compass, because sometimes, because of short success in the short term, you would say, hey, I don't sell salad, but there's a lot of ladies on the next door that are going to the salad bar. Why don't I incorporate salad so they will come? And you start losing your concept. You start losing what you're creating or doing differently. So yeah, patience. Don't change your concept if you think that you have something really well in your hands or really well thought. It'll come. People will start recognizing. People will start coming back, and they'll appreciate you for what you do.
Juan, thanks for this conversation, man.
No,
it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming up here, and thanks for taking the time.
No, most definitely. Thank you very much. I'm excited to see what comes out of it.